to the most spectacular adventure in space, Moonraker. It's out of this world.
What exactly are you up to here, Drax? Moonraker 1, liftoff.
Moonraker 2, liftoff.
Moonraker 3, liftoff.
Moonraker 4, liftoff.
In 1977, the Bond film franchise was rejuvenated with the release of The Spy Who Loved Me, considered by fans and critics to be Roger Moore's best outing as Bond and one of the greatest films in the franchise overall. Not only was it a critical and financial success, but it also cemented the status of producer Albert Cubby Broccoli in his first solo production after co-producer Harry Saltzman had left for financial reasons. As a result, it was only natural that production of the next Bond film would begin and continue to maintain the legacy of the franchise. Hoping to copy the success of The Spy Who Loved Me, Lewis Gilbert was brought back for the third and final time as director, while Christopher Wood returned for the last time as screenwriter. But this wouldn't be your typical down-to-earth Bond film. Instead, Cubby decided to switch things up in a big way and shot for the stars, quite literally, closing out the 1970s era Bond films with 1979 sci-fi flavored Moonraker.
From the most exotic locations on Earth, Moonraker will transport you to another world.
Trifle overpowering your scent.
Originally, Moonraker wasn't planned to be the next film in the series. For Your Eyes Only was set to be adapted instead, with the filmmakers even going so far as to declare so in the end credits of The Spy Who Loved Me. However, the box office success of the newly released Star Wars at the time led to a boom in science fiction films who were eager to cash in on the phenomenon, and Cubby decided to shift gears in the same direction to Moonraker. It was the last of Fleming's original novels to be adapted into a motion picture, and it seems fitting that this one ends in perhaps the most grandiose and spectacular fashion of all. Fleming even intended the story to be a screenplay from the beginning rather than a novel, but ended up novelizing it anyway after failed negotiations to develop the film with other producers. However, as with other Bond adaptations, the original plot is almost entirely absent, being replaced with a new version that actually takes Bond's mission for the first time into outer space. The end result of this original story is unique, entertaining, and a new high for the series, though not without its fair share of lows.
We would be better off working together. Détente.
Agreed.
Understanding.
Possibly.
Cooperation.
Maybe.
Trust.
Out of the question.
To start, the opening scene is fantastic. It shows a space shuttle being transported by air en route to the UK, but is hijacked mid-air and takes off shortly after, while blowing up the plane it was attached to. This prompts MI6 to request Bond to investigate the matter, which prompts him to return to the UK until he ends up being hijacked in mid-air too. This leads to one of the most entertaining brawls in the series to this point. Bond dukes it out with a goon for a bit while his plane is spiraling out of control before being tossed out by a familiar face in the form of Jaws, making him the only returning henchman in the series. Part of what makes this scene so great is the sheer simplicity of it. There's no explosions, guns, or even any real fancy fisticuffs being thrown about. It's just two guys fighting for one parachute combined with John Barry's suspenseful music score. What's even more remarkable is that the actual filming of the scene was anything but simple. The skydiving stuntman made almost 100 jumps just for this scene alone, with each jump contributing to just a few seconds of film each. As I've said with the car transforming in The Spy Who Loved Me, it really is a testament to the dedication of the filmmakers for filming so many takes to make it look as real as possible. Of course, Jaws wants to get a piece of the action, and almost gets a piece of Bond before he escapes. Jaws tries to follow suit with this, but accidentally rips his parachute and starts flapping his arms like a chicken while circus music is playing in the background. I guess you could say it gives new meaning to the term flying circus. After this, we get the opening theme of the film performed for the third time by Shirley Bassey. In my personal opinion, this is the weakest of the three she has contributed for the series. I mean, it's not terrible by any means, but it's not really all that good either. If anything, it feels more like a placeholder for a better theme to come, which is exactly what was supposed to happen. The story goes that Frank Sinatra was considered to perform the theme before Johnny Mathis was offered the opportunity to do so, though he eventually dropped out due to being unhappy with the song's composition. Kate Bush was then offered the chance to perform for it, but also declined due to an upcoming world tour, and with weeks left before the film's release date, Bassie was brought in to finish the job. It's unfortunate that the song turned out to be treated like this because there are parts of it that are great. The lush string passages, the light brass, and Bassie's deep vocals are all really good, but it all feels a little slow. It's more like a lullaby rather than a theme meant to hype me up to watch an action movie. It's a decent song overall, but as a Bond theme, it lacks the energy we've come to expect. Once Bond is briefed by MI6 about the space shuttle incident, he goes to travel to its manufacturing plant known as Drax Industries, headquartered in California, though this scene and many others were filmed in France due to an ongoing tax situation in UK at the time. Bond comes face to face in an initially friendly meeting with Hugo Drax, the head of Drax Industries and the main villain of the film. He's played by French actor Michael Lonsdale and works on the surface as a leading industrialist in developing spacefaring technology. His evil plan is to exterminate all humans on Earth and repopulating it with a master race of humans he handpicks to take shelter with him on a station orbiting in space outside of Earth. This would enable him to act as a sort of god watching over a new world free of conflict, in the same vein as with Stromberg in the previous film. While not very original in this sense, the sheer scope of his plan goes way beyond those of previous villains. Most baddies at this point only wanted control of a certain part of the world, or a specific sum of money in exchange for not killing a certain number of people. Drax, however, wants the whole world to die, and nothing will stop him from trying to claim it for himself. What I like most about Drax, however, is how he's portrayed as a character. He is truly diabolical in every sense of the word. At first glance, he appears to be a refined elite member of higher society. He plays classical music on the piano, has a wide variety of unique art pieces, and dresses in old-fashioned traditional clothing. He looks prim and proper on the outside, but you can just tell from his interactions with Bond that something isn't right with him. The best part about him, though, is his dialogue. Dear God, the dialogue is absolutely fantastic.
James Bond. You appear with the tedious inevitability of an unloved season.
I didn't think there were any seasons in space.
As far as you're concerned, only winter.
I love how unfazed he is with Bond's presence and how nonchalant he is about his plans. Like he knows he's right, and it's just a matter of waiting to see it all come to fruition. And the sophisticated way in which he speaks is way more entertaining than it should be. I mean, seriously, he even makes food sound badass.
You have arrived at a propitious moment, coincident with your country's one indisputable contribution to Western civilization. Afternoon tea. May I press you to a cucumber sandwich?
Man, who would ever think cucumber sandwiches would sound so awesome until that? Beyond this, he remains confident in every scene he's in. He always has a plan B no matter the situation, and will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Portraying a character who wants to rule the world without coming off as a cliché is a really tall order, but thanks to Lonsdale's performance, Drax is both believable and terrifying as a cultivated tyrant capable of committing mass genocide. Great Bond villain.
Look after Mr. Bond. See that some harm comes to him.
Assisting Bond in his mission to stop Drax is undercover CIA agent Holly Goodhead, played by Lois Chiles. Maybe I was spoiled with Barbara Bach's performance in the previous film, but Goodhead is one of the more disappointing Bond girls in this series. She just seems bored in every scene she's in, like she can't wait to get it over with. And whenever she does display any personality, it's mostly in the form of sarcasm, which usually combats with whatever joke Bond cracks her way. It's a total personality clash. On one hand, it does make for some interesting scenes as one tries to outdo the other, but on the other hand, it just leads to pointless banter that fills up way too much time on screen. Not to mention that she sometimes comes off as one of those strong, independent types without any real distinct personality to complement her character. I'll admit it's nice to see her go toe-to-toe with the bad guys on a few occasions and not always running away from the action, so in this sense, she at least isn't the worst Bond girl in the series. It's just a shame they didn't do more to make her character more interesting outside of being a typical CIA agent.
Have you broken something?
Only my tailor's heart. What was that for?
For saving my life.
Remind me to do it more often.
As mentioned before, Jaws makes his second and last appearance in this film. Richard Kiel is still as great as he was in the previous film. He still has a lot of encounters with Bond, and it's great to see the two battling each other in a variety of situations. Unfortunately, he seems to be played up more for laughs this time around, instead of the menacing threat that he was beforehand. Of course, there was some humor in how he casually shrugged off crazy amounts of physical punishment, but it was always balanced with his ability to easily overpower Bond. Some of that is still here in this film, but it mostly takes a backseat in favor of lowbrow gags, which is disappointing, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't laugh here and there. Man, now that's what I call product displacement. Only thing it's missing is a commercial from Bear and Samity.
There is something very special about the taste of 7-Up that's unlike any other soft drink. Maybe because 7-Up has no artificial flavor and no artificial color. Never had it, never will. And no caffeine. Never had it, never will. Whatever it is that makes 7-Up so refreshingly different, the other soft drinks never had it. Ha ha ha. Never will.
There is one thing that stands out as ridiculous as far as Jaws is concerned. Remember in my Diamonds Are Forever review when I commented on a future scene involving holding hands and cheesy romance music? Halfway through the film, he gets a girlfriend. Yeah, seriously, Jaws gets a girlfriend. And it's not like there's any development leading to it. They literally fall in love at first sight, complete with Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet overture in the background. This has to be one of the dumbest scenes in the series, but it's so cheesy I can't help but smile. I mean, even the big guy's gotta get some love too, right? Plus we can thank her for getting Jaws to say his one line of dialogue in the entire franchise.
Well, here's to us.
Now, as always, it's time to talk about the good things about this film that help it stand out. On a technical level, this film is a marvel to behold. The production and set design by Ken Adam is simply amazing. Even though it was made in 1979, everything from the offices of Drax Industries to the inside of the space station has a modern look to it. This film could be made today with the same aesthetic and it wouldn't look outdated at all, at least in my opinion. This was Ken Adams' last contribution to the Bond franchise, and it's certainly a hell of a send-off. His sets help amplify the action of wherever the scene is set, combined with the intricate design replica miniatures of Derek Mettings. The special effects in this regard are a feast for the eyes. I love seeing the particle effects explode all over the screen as the station is blown up. Apparently a shotgun was used to achieve this effect, which I'll admit makes me cringe on Mettings' behalf to see his amazing models get torn to shreds like this, but man does it ever look cool. Even the simple scenes where shuttles cruise in space look great. The filmmakers had difficulty creating the scenes without the stars being superimposed onto the ship, so they ended up fading them to black as the shuttles approached and back in again when they crossed over. Things like these are why I'll always appreciate traditional effects over CGI. The little things really go a long way in making the film look as awesome as possible. Moonraker also has a lot of cool little moments in it, as with other films in the series. One moment involves an Easter egg reference to another film in which Bond sneaks about in a laboratory using the tone from the Spielberg flick Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's another cool moment between Bond and M, though it's more bittersweet. Moonraker was the final Bond film to feature Bernard Lee in the role of M, as he passed away from stomach cancer a few years after its release. It's sad to see him in this film knowing this, but for once his character shows some degree of rapport with Bond, and it's nice to see him close the curtains on his role in this way. One of my favorite moments in the whole franchise happens shortly after Drax addresses his master race in the station. Bond and Goodhead are captured by Jaws and brought to Drax, and he proceeds to verbally tear them apart with some of the best dialogue a villain has ever uttered in a Bond film. Once this is done, Bond decides to appeal to Jaws' better nature by highlighting how Drax plans to execute anyone in the New World who doesn't meet his standards of physical perfection. we slowly start to see the gears turn in Jaws' head as he comes to a decision on what he must do. Then, the moment of truth.
Jaws. Expel them. Jaws, you obey me. Expel them!
Holy crap, this was awesome to see as a kid. It's one thing to see a beloved henchman return for a sequel, but to see him become a good guy and take on Drax's goons was hilariously awesome. Director Lewis Gilbert received a lot of fan mail from children after the premiere of The Spy Who Loved Me, who wanted Jaws to become a good guy to help Bond. This prompted him to deliver one of the greatest instances of fan service ever committed to cinema. Seeing Jaws finally rebel against his master and take out every goon in his way is satisfying as hell. Apparently, this is one of the moments that people complain about when discussing this film. I have no idea why. No other Bond film did something like this before, and the way it happens is so entertaining. Did people really want to see Jaws die at the hands of Bond? Sorry, but this is one thing I'll never stop singing the praises of. To me, there's no such thing as too much fan service. Make no mistake though, there are bad things about this film. Quite a lot of them in fact. I have to be honest and say the story is a little ridiculous. I don't mind the fact that Bond has gone to space to save the world and all that, but the whole master race thing leaves me scratching my head. In the original Fleming novel, Drax was a former Nazi who allied with the Soviets to conspire to fire a nuclear warhead at London. It's pretty basic by evil plot standards, and there wasn't even any space travel in the novel, so I can see why the filmmakers wanted to spruce things up a bit for the film, but I can't help but feel they left something out. In the novel, there was no master race plot, which itself is a concept of Nazi ideology. In the film, the master race is one of the key points of the story, yet there's no mention of Nazism whatsoever. I can understand not wanting to mention Nazism in a lighthearted Bond film, but I find it hard to separate the idea of a master race from its ideology in this case, especially considering Drax was a Nazi. Only in the novel, sure, but they still took inspiration from that background. It makes even less sense because there are clearly multiple races of characters among this specific pool of genetically perfect humans. Maybe I'm taking the whole race thing too literally, but it would have been nice to see Drax's idea of a master race be further expanded upon, rather than just simply being a group of people who look pretty.
Play it again, son.
Another issue I have with the film concerns its campy tone. Yeah, it's already been talked about to death by critics, but it really is a recurring problem. I already talked about the sappy love story between Jaws and his girlfriend, but there's so many other silly moments I'm left palming my face into oblivion. You thought Diamonds Are Forever was campy? Well, you haven't seen Moonraker yet. You've got knife-wielding corpses, sword-dueling a guy in a kendo suit, and Bond dressing up like Clint Eastwood. Seriously, what's the deal with that? By far, the most ridiculous scene in the film is when Bond escapes from goons in the waterways of Venice with an inflatable gondola. Now, the gondola itself doesn't bother me as much, since it's not the first time we've seen weird vehicles in the series. It's everything else that follows that drives me up the wall. The cheap gags are dialed up to 11 in the scene. Everyone acts so dumbfounded. They all look at the boat like they're staring at Jesus Christ. Even the animals. Let me rewind that in case you missed it. A pigeon doing a double take. Now I've seen everything. By the way, it might interest you to know this guy was actually in The Spy Who Loved Me, in a similar situation where he questions his life choices. Don't do drugs, kids. Probably my favorite dumb campy moment in this film that's not related to Jaws is this scene where Bond surprises Goodhead in her hotel room. What the hell kind of noise was that? Is that how you greet someone you know? By hiding in the darkness and spooking them like some sort of cat burglar? And more importantly, is this really how you'd react if someone tried to grab your arm in pitch black darkness? I think I'd be pissing my pants out of sheer terror, but instead, she just sort of gasps like she saw a cool fireworks display. It's a shame Moonraker turned out the way it did, because there are genuinely good things about it. There's a terrifying scene where one of Drax's employees is killed from being eaten by dogs. The cinematography, editing, and music in this are so sublime, I couldn't believe this was in the same movie as all the other stuff was. It feels like Moonraker is trying to be a good film, but it ends up getting bogged down in campy nonsense. And I'm not saying it has to be entirely humorless, but there has to be a healthy balance between comedy and drama, and the balance is sadly lacking in this film. A lot of emphasis went to the special effects for the film, understandably so considering it was made to capitalize on the coattails of Star Wars' massive financial success. In doing so, however, it seems not as much thought was given to the story, with confusing political and religious metaphors being thrown in the mix while Bond goes about his mission. The action does help in its variety to a certain extent, so in that regard it is better than, say, The Man with the Golden Gun, but I can't help but feel the film was made just for the sake of money rather than to be an entertaining work of art. Now, it's definitely not as soulless as Diamonds Are Forever was, and it did gross more money at the box office than any other Bond film at that point, so it can't exactly be considered a failure. To me, it's more of a disappointment than anything. It was the first and to date only Bond film to use space as a location, and I would have loved to see the filmmakers do more with this premise. It's still fun to watch, to be sure, and you can still have a good time with it. It just doesn't quite reach its lunar expectations its title set out to achieve. But hey, at least it landed among the stars. This concludes my review of Moonraker. Thank you for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, stay tuned for the next part.
James,
I think it may be time to go home.
take me around the world one more time.
Why not?
Well, here's to us.